probably concluding chapter 5 in Cana and Capernaum from part 2. The mother still felt that her great son would do something great. Perhaps he had intimated as much, and all that he checks in Mary is her too great forwardness. She tells the servants to be on the alert, although he had said what she could hardly have understood, what perhaps we do not understand. My hour has not yet come. Gregory of Nyssa gives a turn to this, which may be the solution of the difficulties. He regards it as a question. Has not my hour come? He used it afterward on another memorable occasion. He will hasten nothing. He will delay nothing. But does not her speech to the servants show that Mary had some intimation of what Jesus was going to do? Our husband, love, and the Father. As Augustine says, that in me which works miracles was not born of thee. Okay. The ceremonial punctuality of the Jewish religion was observed by this poor family. They had 6 water pots, each holding from 2 to 3 firkins. This word signifies a measure of 8 gallons and 7.4 pints. If we assign 2 firkins and a half, metratas is the original as the average, then they held 133 gallons. They were water pots, not wine jars. They were filled with water. At the command of Jesus, he directed the servants to draw and carry to the governor of the feast, a person called the original Architrichus, who held something like the place of a symposiarch, the master of ceremonies, the rex convivii, probably a guest who kindly by request undertaken the office for the occasion. The servants dipped and bore it to the ruler of the feast, who, when he had tasted it, not knowing whence it was, called his friend, the bridegroom, and pleasantly reminded him that it was customary to produce the best wine at first, and when men had rather cloyed their palates by frequent potations, then to produce the inferior wine. But, said he, you have kept the good wine until now, until the very last. Well, if you're being economical, let people fill up with the other, and when they're not going to use as much, then, wouldn't that be the thing? After everybody gets drunk, there's less drinking per se. The historian pronounces this a miracle. It certainly is, or is a contemptible farce played out by cunning collusion, or the whole story is false. We have no more right to suspect this history than most of Caesar's commentaries on the war in Gaul, or the annals of Tacitus. No, but we must accept this, or reject almost every line of these histories. Accepted, the narrative shows that John, who seems to have been present, believed so far from this being a trick that it was really a miracle. There is nothing gained by any explanation of the palliative class, such as Neander's idea that Jesus was intensified, so to speak, the powers of water into those of wine. One cannot ridicule so respectable and good a man as Neander, but the pressure of the spirit of German criticism upon his excellent mind may be measured by a note in which he says, compare as analogies the mineral springs in which, by natural processes, powers are given to water. New powers are given to water. And the ancient accounts of springs which send forth waters like wine, intoxicating waters. We cannot wonder that Dr. Strauss laughs at Dr. Neander for such passages, nor by Augustine's idea that such a miracle is wrought in our vineyards yearly, and Jesus simply has tended the processes of nature by which water becomes wine. In his words in something Evangelist John, Tract 8, are Ilad autem non miramur quia omni anno fit. Esse duitate impicit ad murationem. Okay. This view is endorsed by Trench on Miracles, page 91, when the usually judicious writer compares this to the unnoticed miracle of everyday nature and speaks of the difference lying in the power and will by which the intervening steps of these tardier processes were overleaped and the result obtained at once. There is no comparison. There is in this act of Jesus at Cana no such basis as soul and germ, vine and grape, through which to propel the wine. It was a clear and sheer miracle, the simple basis being water and the result being wine. It was a miracle or nothing. We do no credit to our intellects by dodges or subterfuges. Well, the real issue is that whether it was lawful or not, according to their theology, Galatians 5 indicates you can't be an addict. How are you not be an addict to alcohol if you're drinking it? Because all you have to do to be an addict is to crave it. It's the only sure way is to abstain. Certainly the issues with the intellect and the impulse control and stuff like that. So the idea of Jesus being like miraculously producing alcohol, like Bacchus, a sort of drunkard deity idea, I think that would present more problems than dealing with this stuff, right? Trouble is given some commentators by the abundance of wine which Jesus made. It looks like putting temptation in men's way, it is said, but it does not the All-Father to do that perpetually and plentifully. There is nothing about us which is not open to that objection. Why does God allow grapes to grow? Why does God give men appetites? All life is a submitting of the human spirit to the discipline of trial. Well, there is a difference between the good in grapes and grain and all that, and the intoxication in it, right? Cannabis oil applied has all sorts of benefits that you don't have to turn to, consuming it or smoking it or whatever you want to call it. Now I know there's medicinal uses. None of them are smoking, by the way, but yeah. Because that's the common example that people would use. Just like caffeine. Caffeine, too, is for skin and hair, but not for the internal organs. You don't want it in your stomach or your bladder. Well, maybe you do, but I mean, health-wise, you don't. The lesson to the disciples and to the world is wholesome. They had been in the ascetic school of John in the very opening of his public career. Jesus teaches them that all the courtesies of life are to be respected, that no man is to be so great as not to give a portion of his time to the demands of society, that indulgence in innocent pleasures should have the sanction of the loftiest and grandest natures, that marriage is not to be discouraged because the work of some men in the world forbids them, as his forbade him, to partake the blessed sweetness of married love, and that he came not to destroy, but to rectify. None of this doing away with the law, but he's restoring the law, right? Plahrose, is that the word being used here? Not to sadden, but to transfigure all life by heightening the spiritual part of man and connecting his ordinary drudgery with the highest hopes by turning the water of ordinary existence into the wine of a generous, rich, and exhilarating life. And his disciples believed on him. John 2:11. After this, Jesus, with Mary and her other sons, the half-brothers of Jesus, accompanied by the disciples, went down to Capernaum, which lay on the western side of the Sea of Galilee, a place where we shall find him doing many of his mighty works, and which, according to his prediction, has been lost from human geography so thoroughly that no ecclesiastical tradition ventures to fix its site. Dr. Robertson exposes the views of all previous travelers in their attempts to identify the locality. See Biblical Researches 3, 288, 294. The not many days seems to signify his eagerness to be about his work rather than to indicate any chronological space.